Jason Van Tatenhove, and I wanted to introduce you to a couple of my personal friends who've been arrested lately. This is part one of a two-part series. Second one will be on Todd Engel. Watch for it to be released soon. I first met Jake Ryan a couple of years ago when I had the opportunity to travel to a political activism event with Jake and his brother Newman. They were traveling with one Ren Bodecker, who at the time was one of our greatest still living war heroes from World War II. The guy had literally saved hundreds of lives from a prison camp that they had broken these prisoners out of. It turned out the whole Ryan family had been instrumental in helping Ren to fight to keep his home and assets after they'd been wrongly taken by an out-of-control state trustee who thought they could just take everything Ren owned, not just what he owed from a bankruptcy proceeding. But that's another story. You can find it on oathkeepers.org by just searching Ren Bodecker. Back to the Ryans. What struck me most about the Ryan boys was they were just so dynamic in their own ways. Newman in his larger-than-life street performer-like persona, and Jake with his more reserved, almost a quiet, demure air about him. I remember after returning home after spending several weeks with the brothers in the desert of the Southwest, I started up a conversation with my wife about how, after meeting these two and getting to know them personally, that I had a little bit more hope for our future, that these millennial kids were just so bright and dynamic. They were so awake and so aware of what was going on and willing to go plug in and be a part of our great tradition of political activism. Now, Jake and Newman come from a very large family that have all been homeschooled. And I can tell you from the conversations we had that the family made constitutional study one of the pillars of their homeschool curriculum. It was more than just historical knowledge. It was the ability to think critically about political issues and then to go take action. There was a definite influence passed down the generations from the founding fathers to these two young men. When Ren Bodecker finally passed a year later, it was the Ryan family that jumped into action to organize his burial and memorial. Ren's last dying wish was to be buried on his own property next to his wife that he had just loved so much and tragically lost earlier in life. We all came together to make sure that wish was fulfilled, but it was the Ryans who really made that happen. When I had first heard Jake went to the Refuge, it was concerning for me. For those of you that follow my work know that I didn't fully agree with the taking of the Refuge, how it was done. But in the end, these guys were our people. These are the people that stood shoulder to shoulder with us in these other operations and other days of activism. So we had to stand with them and support what they were doing to make sure another Waco situation didn't occur. I was relieved to hear that Jake had gotten out of the Refuge and was then told at the time that as long as he left when he did, that no charges would be filed against him. There were then several witnesses that overheard that promise made by the feds. In the following interview, I'm speaking with Jake's mother, Roxanne Ryan. She talks about Jake as only a mother can, not as a criminal or accused domestic terrorist, but as an inspired young man just beginning his journey into adult life. Jake never committed a crime in his life. Unfortunately, now Jake's adult life may be put on hold for a very long time. This is a new grim reality that many of us are now facing. We need to take the time to share these stories, to get to know these people, to know that these are contributing members of our society, that they just want to see our country return to greatness. Again, please watch for the next installment on Todd Engel. I hope you enjoy this interview. All right, folks, this is Jason Van Tatenhove with Oath Keepers Media. And this is the first interview I'm going to be doing in a series of interviews talking about my friends that I know personally that have been arrested. And as many of you know, I was at Bundy Ranch at most of these operations that were happening, albeit as alternative media. But I've made many friendships, and through the years, one of those the brightest friendships that I've made is with Jake Ryan and his brother. I first met them a couple years back at one of the events that we attended together, and I remember going back and talking to my wife about Jake and his brother, and just reminiscing that these two young, dynamic individuals, these are young guys in their early 20s, they have their whole lives in front of them, really gave me hope for this millennial generation, that if these two kids could come out there and just be so intelligent and so bright and so dynamic and engaged, that it really was hope out there. Well, unfortunately, Jake has been arrested since then, and we have on the line with us today Roxanne Ryan, Jake's mother. Thanks for joining us, Roxanne.
Hi, thank you for doing the interview. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, my experience with Jake has been fairly limited to working with him, with Ren and Ren Bodecker, for those of you who follow my work. And, just getting to know him in the last couple years, but you obviously, his whole life you've been a part of. Tell us a little bit about who Jake Ryan is. What makes him so dynamic?
Jake Ryan is a very special young man. He has 5 brothers and 6 sisters. And he has been homeschooled all his life. And Jake struggled as a young boy. I remember homeschooling him, and he learned things a little backwards, and we struggled with that for a long time. But he worked so hard to try to learn and to gain the knowledge that he needed. He loved to laugh. He didn't talk early, but he laughed. He used to laugh and loved to help.
What were some of Jake's interests as a kid? I mean, obviously he's been drawn to political activism. What started him down that? What sparked that interest?
He has, as the homeschoolers, I taught them from the Constitution. Many of our writings, I would have them write directly from the Constitution. I would have them study it. I would have them write what they felt it meant. We read many books of the early founders. We read many books of the Revolution and the writings of George Washington, Benjamin Franklin. This was so very much a part of our homeschool. It meant a great deal to me, and I wanted my kids to have a feeling for their country and for the Constitution and what it meant in their life, and how to understand it. And Jake, I remember as just a 10, 12-year-old, we used to write, because I would have them write, and he used to write his feelings about the Constitution and what it meant to him and what freedom meant to him and what liberty meant to him, even at a very young age. It meant a great deal to him. And like I said, he loved people. He was always support of the underdog and could not stand a bully, and always wanted to protect the siblings and children from those who might hurt them. He loved the outdoors. He loved to fish. He loved to roll rocks as a young man. Him and his brothers would constantly be hiking, and one of his funnest stories to get him talking is how they would roll rocks and what they did when they did that. He loves animals. He grew up with animals. He loves good food. But he just always had a very passionate love.
So what did you guys encourage him to go be a part of some of these actions that happened, like Malheur, or was that something he just did on his own? Is that just something that he felt in his heart? Obviously, is one of his brothers obviously active as well. What got him actually boots on the ground and attending these activities? Because a lot of people will talk about how things are wrong in this world, And I think it's a whole nother type of person to actually go across the country and get boots on the ground and say, all right, I'm going to stand with these people because I believe what they're doing is right. And Jake obviously is one of those people.
Yes, Jake is very committed. When he has a strong conviction of something, he's willing to stand by that conviction, no matter the cost. And he had been through the ordeal with the World War II vet that we tried to help for several years. He had stood by Ren Bodecker's side and had been to court with him, with myself, and he was appalled by the treatment that Ren Bodecker received, and it meant a great deal to him because he grew a great love for this older gentleman and would go out and spend many days just helping Ren when he got weaker and sicker, and would stay out with him. So it wasn't the first time that he has helped someone. He has been to the aid of many people when they needed help. I remember when we lived in Oregon and we come across a family who had crossed wires with people in California, and the social services had gone after their children. And I remember him saying, Mom, we got to help them. We got to help those kids. So he's been that way all his life. And when he heard about what was happening in Oregon, because of the connection that I had learned about the Bundys from my dad close to 25 years ago. Growing up, my dad had told me about a rancher in Nevada who was fighting for his land. And so I had heard the name Cliven Bundy many years ago from my dad. And then my other son heard about him when he was in Washington, D.C. and learned about him. So it's kind of ironic that name has been in our family for a long time. And when we heard about what was happening in Oregon, he wanted to go. I said, Mom, I need to go. I need to meet them. I need to see what I can do to help. I need to know for myself what's going on. And so he went down, and because of the bond that he created with these wonderful men, he stayed and wanted to help however they needed help. And so that's how he got down there, and that's why he went down there.
Now, I don't want to talk too much about the court case because we don't want to give them any more ammunition, but I think there are a couple big points that need to be made. And that, first off, I don't see Jake ever threatening anyone, period. I mean, this is a kid that is so soft-spoken and just so willing to help that I just could never see that. And for them to say that he has gone and destroyed an archaeological site, folks, let me tell you what happened there. There was a road, and I know this because I was there on location filming interviews. I was going in with the press during the time that the press was there. I spent about a week there covering the story for oathkeepers.org and other alternative media sites, Revolution Radio. And as I was walking down this cutback, they would bring everybody, they'd have their morning press brief up above the compound there, where there's a parking lot. And then there's a switchback driveway that goes back. And this thing was covered with a sheet of ice. I fell probably 3 times, literally fell down with all my camera gear and whatnot, going down there. And I've talked to guys from Reuters and documentary filmmakers that had the exact same experience. It was a treacherous driveway. And so what happened with the excavator? Jake went and filled some gravel in on this ice. There was no archaeological site destroyed. There was nothing like that. It was simply putting gravel on a hazard that people were falling on. I think we need to keep that very clear. The other thing I wanted to just mention is when we were able to get him out, he was, Oath Keepers kind of worked behind the scenes to get several carloads out. And I know he didn't come out with those guys that first night, the night Lavoie was shot, but he got out shortly after. And part of that release was they weren't supposed to be charged with anything if they didn't have any prior prior charges.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, what did they then touch on that with you? I mean, I believe that was the conditions they set forth for people coming out. Were they?
Exactly.
What are your thoughts on that?
One of Sean Anderson's wife, who was in prison, called me from prison and said, "You need to know this. You need to know that Jake was guaranteed that he would not be arrested then or later if he went when he did." And that was the only condition that Jake walked. And it was not only heard by her, but we have been told that it was heard by at least 4 to 5 other people. And so this was the condition that Jake walked from the refuge. And I know the day that Lavoie was called, Jake called us, and he basically called to say goodbye because he thought they were going to kill all of them and that his life was to end. And that was a great feeling in his voice. He called us, and that was what he was doing. He was calling to say goodbye because of the things that had happened. They feared for their life.
Wow. What has this? I mean, this has been a roller coaster for your family. I can see you being so proud of your son wanting to go out and be involved and take a stand, and yet, I know my family fears for me when I go out to these things and knowing the Finnecums and seeing just the hole in those poor girls' hearts that is left there from the passing of their father, and this is just tearing families apart. Talk a little bit about the impact Jake's arrest and then before his arrest when you knew about the indictment. What has that done to your family? How has that affected you guys?
It's like living in a nightmare. Every day you wake up and you wonder, before he was arrested, you wondered where he was. You wondered, excuse me, if he was warm. You wondered if he was hungry. You wondered if he was safe. And you prayed that somewhere someone might befriend him. And then when he was arrested, you wished he was out running again because you know that he's only at the mercy of the feds in prison, and he has no safety there. You wonder if they're going to come after my other son, the rest of us, because we believe like we believe. Every time you go to town, you keep your eyes open for a marked car or a car that don't look familiar. You wonder who's coming up the driveway. And you lay awake at night wondering if they're going to bust through your door like they've done so many. And life is not the same. You try to get back on an even keel, and you try not to think about it. You try to keep your thoughts in the light. You try to imagine your son free. And then you'd go try to see him, and they won't let you see him. And it takes all day to finally just be able to talk to him through a phone. And you ask him how he's doing, and you say, well, Mom, he says, Mom, they treat you pretty much like an animal. So you wonder, is being like they told us when they were trying to convince us to turn him in, that at least he would be safe. Well, I wonder what is safe as opposed to being free. I sometimes wondered, I thought often about if my son died when he called from the refuge, not knowing if he was going to make it home. And I pondered about that for a long time, and I thought, at least in death, I know where he'd be. Because he would be free.
I know it's hard.
Free now.
There are a lot of people going through very similar things right now.
Yeah, it's not just it's not just about Jake. There's so many others. It's like the rancher here in Missoula and Montana faces 5 years by the BLM, the forestry, and he's 77 simply for building a pond.
Joel Robertson. Yeah, convicted for dredge material on a pond that doesn't exist, that he didn't put in there, that they literally caught an agent putting a drainage into, but that didn't matter. I'll be releasing an article on him here later this week too. Yeah, it just doesn't seem to stop. So what's next for Jake? Where are we on the process? He's now over there in Portland, correct? Tell us what's happening with Jake now. What's happening as far as upcoming proceedings, and then let's. How can people help? How can people help donate and write to Jake and send him books and whatnot? Let's talk about that.
Any type of letters would be awesome, just to keep his spirits up. And the cost, of course, our prisons are money-making racketeers. Everything that they need, they have to buy, and the prices are exorbitant. Whether it's toothpaste, toothbrush, comb, shampoo, all that has to be bought. Words of encouragement, letters. That's the only thing he can receive. He can't receive postcards. He can't receive stamps. To send money, it needs to come through the proper channels, because you can't just send him money in an envelope. They don't allow that. They'll confiscate that. The lawyer that's been appointed to him is appealing the decision of keeping him in there until trial. So that's in the workings right now. But there is, of course, anything in the legal system takes time. And as far as I know, the trial is set for in September. And that's about as far as I know as far as the legal end and what's going on there. But to go down and see him, of course, is expensive. To keep a phone, to keep so that he can call out, is expensive. Anything to do with the jail is expensive. And so donations would be a great help.
Now, you have a PayPal account set up that people can donate to you. What is the email address associated with that?
mtbenefit2012 at gmail.com.
That was MT as in Montana, benefit, BENIFIT.
At gmail.com.
mtbenefit at gmail.com. I'm sorry, it's a year. I'm going to put this into the show notes, folks. mtbenefit
2012
at gmail.com. All right. We will put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, if anybody remembers Ren Bodecker, that was the same email that we used for him.
And if you haven't, you can just go back to oathkeepers.org and do a search there. I've written many articles on Ren as well. So we'll go ahead and get that out. Is there an address that you know of that people can write to Jake at?
The address is, hang on a minute, I thought I had it right here. The address is, you start by putting inmate mail, and then underneath that you'll put Jake Ryan, ID number 796534, and then the address is 11540 Northeast Inverness Drive, Portland, Oregon 97220.
Sorry, I was talking to the mute button. What was the name of the street one more time?
Inverness, Invernesses Drive.
Okay, so that was inmate male, and the next line, Jake Ryan, ID number 796534.
Correct.
And the address is 11540 Northeast Inverness Drive. That was Portland, Oregon 97220.
Correct.
Okay, we'll get that out there. Can people send him books through Amazon and such? I think they can send him new books and magazines as long as it's not like guns and ammo.
It says here, let's see, things that they can't send him: pictures, photos, greeting cards, plastic wood stone. Let's see. I thought it said we couldn't send books, but maybe.
People can't send him pictures, huh?
It says not.
Mm.
Yeah. It doesn't, I don't see where it says books, but
I think according to like Todd and some of our other guys, you can send books and magazines, but they must be brand new, and you must order them from Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, well, then that should be the same for them.
What sort of books would Jake like to get, or magazines?
Oh, anything to do with nature or photography, acting. Yeah, he loves to act. I forgot to mention that when he was in his early 20s and late teens, he went over to help the high school over in Ronan, Montana, and he helped with productions over there, just helping kids do well in their plays because he loves to act. He just absolutely loves helping people to do good at their acting, and he's very, very good at it, and loved to help make the props. He was in fifth heaven when he was helping people.
All right. Well, Roxanne, I'm so sorry for everything you're going through. Jake's a good friend of mine, and I want to do everything I can to help. Do you have an email address that people can write to send you support?
The same email that I gave you.
Okay.
Is mine. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time.
I want to thank you, and I want to thank the people out there, and I want to tell them to wake up, to claim their conscience, and to be the people that we were created to be, and to wake up the masses. Talk to your neighbor. Learn to live again. Jake used to always say, if we don't live free, then we're not free. So we have to live the talk. And we have to be who we were meant to be. So God bless all of you and all those people who supported Ren. I had so many people supporting Ren, and I would publicly like to thank them for all the support they gave him.
Well, you guys were instrumental in that, and right down to taking the time to go make sure he got buried on his own property. And anyone who knows the inside golf of that story knows that your family was absolutely paramount in helping Ren out. So thank you for what you guys are doing, and we'll keep everyone apprised of what's happening with Jake, and hopefully we'll get a lot of people supporting. I want to encourage everyone listening to this, watching the video, reading the article, to do their part, really dig deep. I know times are tough, but these guys went out, they put their lives on the line, they put their freedom on the line, and now they're paying that price. So we need to support them as best we can. We need to, give what we can. It doesn't have to be much, but all of us need to try to give something. So please, folks, help share this out, help share the articles out, and help support our political prisoners. Thank you very much, Roxanne.
Thank you. Bye.